We have another question that came in from Facebook talking about the campaign and what it's like to be out on the campaign trail. The specific question is, do you think Obama has created a good enough record to show during the current campaign, or is he still relying on concepts more than data?
Well, I'm obviously going to give a slightly biased. Let me start with what the Republicans will say. The Republicans will say that the country is not in better shape, that, you know, it's the old classic line that Ronald Reagan asked during his campaign: are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And so what the Republicans are going to try to do is appeal to people who aren't hard Democrats or hard Republicans, again, those undecided voters who can go either way, and they're going to try to say, you know, our economy is still in bad shape. You're still worried about if you're going to have a job. You're still worried about your children's future. And President Obama, they won't say president. You know, they'll just say Obama, because you don't want to give him the accoutrements of the office. Hasn't done his job. And so you want to just see that doubt in people. So they say, all right, let's just try something new. What the president has to do is make the case that we have been through obviously tough times, exceptionally historic tough times, and that we are on the right track and we shouldn't stop now. We have to keep going, we have to stay the course. And we have to keep moving. And by re-electing me, you will give me the time that I need with my policies to really make things the way that everybody wants it to happen. And so that will be the argument that you will hear. Now, if you're asking me from a purely, if I go into my, like, you know, I'm a Democrat and an Obama supporter, you know, I will say, look, the economy, the bottom fell out of the economy right before he took office. We were in the worst economic situation since the Great Depression. And, you know, we are turning it around. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but we're clearly in much better shape than we were 4 years ago through some very specific things that the president has done. And so, you know, let's see. And then I would also say, let's see what the other side is proposing. And is their medicine any better than what the president has? And then I would try to make a case that what, you know, Governor Romney is going to propose isn't what the country needs. And so that's going to be the tension. Now, the thing that I will say is I was actually looking back when Ronald Reagan, who the Republicans and even Democrats, because, you know, I mean, he kicked our can twice when he ran and when he was reelected. When Ronald Reagan was when he entered office, the country had, I believe it was a 12.5% unemployment rate. It went up to somewhere around 16% unemployment. The day in November of 1984, when he was running for re-election, the unemployment rate was close to 11%. Right now, we have about an 8% unemployment rate. The economic miracle that you will hear Republicans talk about that happened during the Reagan years, unemployment didn't get under 8% until 1988, the last year of his second term in office. But Ronald Reagan carried 49 states in 1984. The only state he lost was Minnesota, where Walter Mondale was from and had represented as a senator, and Washington, D.C., which isn't a state, but which is heavily Democratic. And so why is that? Because, you know, if you were looking, as the question suggests, at the pure data, there wasn't much there. But what Ronald Reagan, President Reagan was a master at was, again, making the case, we've been through a lot, but think about your life in the future. And people will think, well, do I see my life better with him in office? And does he represent what I want to see in a president? And they had these wonderful ads politically called Morning in America. And it was, you know, the birds were chirping and the sun was coming up and kids were skipping to school and all that. And it said, you know, Reagan Bush is about morning in America. Well, it wasn't morning in America. You still had, you know, more people out of work then than are now. But you make people feel that. They're like, okay, I'm going to, you know, it's like the slot machine. Like, all right, I'm going to put my quarter in one more time and pull the lever and hope for something. And so that's and frankly, you know, if I criticize my own side, Democrats were awful at portraying optimism. You know, I think in that election we were talking about like we're going to raise your taxes and life is awful, and well, who wants that? You know, that doesn't sound like much fun. I mean, all right. So you're saying I'm going to put you in office to make me feel worse than I am now? Well, no. And frankly, kind of, you know, I like to say that it took a while for Democrats to kind of get the lemon out of their mouth when they were campaigning. And you have to project a certain sense of like optimism and that like, you know, and again, this goes back to the issue around the president who's also the monarch, where people want to see that like, all right, you feel that like we're going to be in good shape. I don't want to hear that you had a hard day at work and our problems are hard and I have sleepless nights because I just don't know what we're going to do about it. I don't want to hear that if I'm a voter. I want to hear that like you've got a handle on this. You're going to come out and you're going to look me in the eye and say, this is the greatest country in the world, and sure, we have problems, but you know what? We're going to deal with that and move on. So, and frankly, it took someone like Bill Clinton, who is just by his nature just utterly optimistic, even on his worst day, to really kind of just project that sense of like, yeah, you know, we got problems, but we'll fix that. So that's going to be key, I think, in this election as well, is the challenge that, you know, I think the challenge that, say, Governor Romney is going to have is while attacking the president and criticizing, you know, what he's going to do, is does he project some sense of energy and optimism and not just sort of, you know, I mean, the shtick he has right now is that he's kind of this sort of like, you know, not particularly exciting, et cetera. Well, that matters in terms of who people want to vote for. You know, I mean, in 2000, I'll say, you know, from the Al Gore, George Bush experience, I used to hate this, but it's true. They used to say, who would you rather have a beer with? Well, look, the reality is I don't want to give the code to launching nuclear weapons to the person I want to have a beer with. I can't think of any of my friends who should have the power to destroy the world. I don't know. You shouldn't get that. But the reality is that gut check for some people is really that kind of personal and visceral.